So, what's something we actually want to happen when we submit the form? The homework was to do two different things. It was to keep track of it in an array and to display it on the page in a list, right? We're going to worry about the data first. We're going to add it to an array. Of the two, it's kind of the more important thing, really. So we're not going to worry about the user interface just yet. We're going to add it to an array. We're going to keep track of this array throughout the life of the app, basically. So yesterday, we enhanced our user directory thing to keep the current user inside a little object, right? We can do the same thing with the flick. We're going to do it from the beginning this time. So when the form is submitted, let's make a variable const flick that is an object. And this object is going to have a name, and that's going to be f.flickName.value. And I'm going to remember to put a comma there, because otherwise I will not remember to put it there when I add another item to the object. To prove that this much worked, I could just console log that real quick, just the object itself. Console log flick. See what happens. Refresh. G.I. Joe. Yeah, I got an object with a name of G.I. Joe. Database is a lot of, yeah, go ahead.
Ever since we started putting stuff like an object, I'm not getting like any more autofill stuff. Is that like supposed to happen?
Like inside VS Code?
Yeah, like when I'm typing something, I don't get like suggestions or like I can't like scroll down and get in there to autocomplete.
For anything? Am I getting it? Am I getting the things that you're expecting to see?
I wasn't really thinking.
Okay. I can't say for sure yet whether that's a problem, but like it's not gonna. I don't know. Maybe not. I'm not sure. Okay. Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that and keep an eye on whether mine's behaving differently from yours. Other questions? Okay. So a lot of times in databases, there'll be an ID that uniquely identifies everything, right? And it'll like be an auto-incrementing number. Like the first one will have an ID of 1, second one will have an ID of 2. Sometimes it's a random string. How about we give all of our flicks an ID? Because it might be useful for referring to them later. Let's do it. Sounds like fun. So ID, but what do we set it to? Because we need it to get bigger each time, right? How would you do this? Yeah.
Just make like the global variable count and then just do plus count.
I like where your head's at, except for the global variable part, because we're not creating any global variables, right? But we, at the very least, we need a variable that is accessible both to handle submit and init, right? We'll try not to make it global, but it does need to be in scope in both of those functions, right?
So in the app itself, so you make another variable like in it and handle submit, you just make like a count and then set it equal to 0 and then do plus count.
So we make a new property on app itself, right? Yeah, I like that. And we'll use it to keep track of the biggest ID so far, right? So I'll call it nothing personal, max. So I could just say max colon 0 up here like this, right? Something like that? Maximum, yes. Okay. So I'm not going to do it this way, though. Actually, what I'm going to do instead is inside a init, I'm going to say this dot max equals 0. Same thing, but I'm going to do it this way. Does it matter that I didn't already define this dot max? It doesn't. You can assign a new property on an object after you've created it. So I could say, now I think I've messed something up. Oh, I have my ID colon nothing here, so I'll get rid of that for the moment. So inside init, which gets run first thing, I'm going to set this dot max equals 0. And that's the same thing as app dot max, right? I've just done the same thing as if I had said max 0, comma. Does that make sense that those are the same thing? Your eyebrows say no, yeah? So max in this case would only reinitialize, okay, if I do it the way I did it on line 2, it would set back to 0 every time. Like I haven't done anything to increment it yet. But it would only get set to 0 when app is first created, when that variable is first set. When I do it on line 4, that will happen every time init is run. And init is only run the once, right? That's why I didn't do it inside handle submit. Yeah, if I'd done it inside handle submit, it would have gotten reset every time I submitted the form. Yeah. So it's not a variable, it's a property on an object. So it doesn't exactly have scope. You have to get through it through app. But app is global, so you could say app.max from anywhere. But you would have to go through app to do that. So from anywhere inside app, you should be able to say this dot max. So again, I'm going to do it the way I did it on line 4, because I just like it better because I'm initializing something. Sort of like a constructor. So then what I want to do is increment it every time I run handle submit, right? So yeah, what were you thinking?
Like plus plus or so I call the max function and then I do plus plus at the end.
Okay.
The ID needs to start from 0 rather than
Yeah. Right. So I could set the ID here to this dot max plus 1 and make sure that I permanently increment it there maybe. So it's going to start at 0, right? So the first time this is going to be 1, right? And now this dot max will be 1. So
why can't we just do plus plus this dot max?
plus plus this dot max right here.
Yeah. Rather than
Totally can. I think it's just a little confusing to teach. That's truly the only reason that I'm not doing it that way.
then isn't it better for the IDs to start from 0 rather than from 1?
They're not array indices.
So like if we ever need it to be used for an array, like maybe in the future.
The thing is, you can delete them from the middle and stuff, so the IDs are not guaranteed to be sequential inside an array. So I don't necessarily want my array indices to match my IDs. And I truly don't think I've ever seen a database that does start counting at 0. Array indices, it kind of makes sense because of address values and stuff. But for an ID in a database, I'd rather start at 1. Yeah, valid suggestion though. Everybody familiar with plus plus and stuff? And the difference between plus plus the thing and the thing plus plus? Okay. So let's see what this does. Let's say I equals 0. I plus plus returns 0, but now I is 1. Let's set I back to 0. Plus plus I returns 1, and I is now 1. So plus plus increments something in place. And if you do the plus plus before the name of the variable, then it will increment it before it returns it, basically. If you put plus plus afterward, it'll return the current value, then it will increment it. So if we say plus plus this dot max here, then we'll get the larger number and it will be permanently increased. Yeah.
If for some reason not getting the IDs are not available.
Yeah, this is not going to work yet. Let's see what happens. Refresh. Try it out. ID, not a number. What? Let's see what app.max is. Oops, app.max, enter. Still 0. What gives? We've been betrayed. Oh, this. You card, you. Let's put a debugger in here, just so we can halt execution inside handle submit, see if we can figure out what's going on, because something isn't working the way we expected. Refresh the page, submit something. Here we are. So now we're on line 12. Go to my console. Let's event.target right now. Event.target is the form, so the world isn't totally upside down. What's this.max? Undefined. What? Well, what's this? This is the gosh darn form. So, handle submit is a method on app, right? And we've established that methods, inside a method, this should be set to the object itself, right? Sometimes, yeah. But the way that this is set is not dependent so much on how you defined the function as how you called it. It's how the method is invoked that determines how this is set. If you call a method by saying something dot that thing, open close parentheses, then yes, this is going to get set to whatever came before the dot. So when we call app.init, inside init, this will be app, because that's how we called it. Now, handle submit was defined exactly the same way as a method on app. But we didn't call it using parentheses, did we? We said this.handle submit, so you would think that inside handle submit, this would be set to the same this as here. It's so hard to talk about this without sounding ridiculous. But we didn't invoke handle submit, did we? JavaScript invoked it for us automatically when the event fired. And it's the function invocation that sets this. Anytime a function is run as an event handler, it doesn't matter whether it's a method or not. This is going to get set to the event target. So, we've been betrayed. Up is down, left is right. Guess we just can't do it, can we? Sure we can. We have the power. We can get clever here. I can think of 2 ways to fix this. Without changing the contents of handle submit. Because I really want this to be set to the right thing in there. We can make it happen, by golly. How can we do that? Anybody know a trick for this? There's 2 pretty good ones. 3. Yeah. We can't get max from the event, and I don't really want to change anything inside handle submit itself. I want to somehow get this to be set to the right thing. But we've established that event handlers always set it to the wrong thing. I mean, it's not wrong. It just feels wrong. This is how JavaScript was designed 23 years ago, so that's how it is. Well, say again. Ooh. What if that's not the event handler? But how can we do that? What if we do this? What if instead of this .handle submit being the event handler, we just make up an anonymous function here that calls this .handle submit? Now we're the ones who called handle submit. So this will be set to the object on which we called it. Totally works. Now, we're not passing in the event anymore, right? So we need to make sure we do that. Our event handler, which is now this anonymous function, will get the event passed into it. And if we want that to make its way down to handle submit, we're going to have to pass it on. Very good. Is it all true? I still have my debugger in there. Let's test this. Can I what? I will put it back in a moment. Let's make sure it works before we go too far. Don't want you to copy the wrong thing. So let's type something in here. Magic Mike. Whoa. What'd I forget? I prevented default down here. I need to prevent default up there inside my event handler. What the crap? I did an autocomplete. I did an autocomplete in here. Well, that would do it. But still, I want to prevent the default right away. So I'll do it in here, not down there. Yeah, my autocomplete got out of control there. All right, Magic Mike. This to handle submit is not a function, it says now. Isn't this fun? But I like the way you're thinking. I mean, you're right. Writing another function that calls it would totally set it as the right thing inside handle submit. If only we could get to handle submit, but inside this anonymous function, this is the wrong thing, right? Because inside this anonymous function, now it's the event handler, so this is set to the dang form again. Don't you love this? It'll be all right. Hey, remember arrow functions? I told you they were different. So what if instead of saying keyword function, we made this anonymous function using an arrow function? For one thing, it just looks a little nicer. It no longer scrolls off the right of the screen. And arrow functions don't behave the same exactly. It's not just a shorthand for the same thing. We also learned yesterday if there's only one argument, you can leave the parentheses off. But you can put them there if you want to. If it's clearer to you to have the parentheses, go ahead. But this is just the argument that's getting passed into our anonymous function. So basically, we've done the same thing here. We've created an anonymous function that takes an event as an argument. Refresh the page. Magic Mike. And now I'm inside handle submit. And inside handle submit, this is the object. So now it works. Let's get rid of the debugger and let's actually watch it work from the beginning. Then I will pause and let you look at this. G.I. Joe, the second one, where I think C. Tates gets killed right at the beginning. Spoiler alert. But I haven't actually seen it, so I could be wrong. Hey, totally worked. There's my object. So yeah, that totally works. Instead of making handle submit the event handler, make the event handler an anonymous function that then calls handle submit. And the magic thing about arrow functions is they bind this the way you expect it to, even if they're event handlers. So default behavior, event handlers always bind this to the target of the event. But arrow functions always bind this to whatever it is in the surrounding context. Whatever this was on that line, that's what this is going to be inside that arrow function. So it eliminates a lot of surprises, which is why I never use this to get to the event target. I always get it from the event object, because it's just confusing. So I said I could think of a couple ways. I'll show you the other one real quick. Don't copy it. We'll stick with this one. I like this one. The other way, we could have said add event listener. Oops. Submit. Handle submit. I used the word bind several times there. I kept talking about what this is bound to. Well, if you have a function object, and right now handle submit is a function object, right? With parentheses, it would be the return value of handle submit. But just handle submit, that's the function itself. Excuse me, this.handle submit. And all functions have a method right on the function called bind. For a given function, creates a bound function that has the same body as the original function. In other words, bind returns a copy of that function, but with a new binding. So you can tell it what you want this to be. So if I just type this in here, then now the return value of this.handleSubmit.bind is a new copy of handle submit with this bound the way we want it. Another nice thing about bind, this is the answer to your question from the other day. How can you pass more arguments into an event handler? Any additional arguments you put inside bind will be passed as arguments to the event handler. And we know event handlers always get an event object passed in, right? The event will always be last in the argument list. So if you're passing in any additional arguments, remember the event will always be passed in after all of those. If this is making your brain explode, just ignore this part because we're not going to do it this way anyway, right? We're going to do it the other way. But it's a good trick to have, especially if you're in an environment where you don't have ES6, because arrow functions were introduced in ES6, aka ECMAScript 2015. So it's a reasonably new trick, but at this point, it's supported almost everywhere. If you don't have to support IE9 or something goofy like that, then you're probably fine. So we're going to do it this way. So our event handler is not actually handle submit directly, but this arrow function that then calls handle submit. And because it's an arrow function, inside this anonymous function, this is bound the way we expect. Yeah.
Inside that, you can also put other functions too, right?
Yeah. I mean, now we've got this anonymous function here. We can do whatever we want. We did event prevent default before we bothered calling handle submit. So I don't know. It was before class started, I think. He asked earlier, can you have call more than one function as the event handler? Well, no, but you could write a function that calls multiple functions. You can also add more than one event listener, but that might not work the way you expect it to. But that's another way you can do it. All right. So, yeah, we've got an idea of one here. Let's make sure if we add another one, it does what we expect. Step up. ID 2. Okay, cool. Seems to work the way we expected. Now, it's not clearing out the dang form, right? We're familiar with that now. Let's just go ahead and do it. So at the end of handle submit, let's just do an f.reset. F, remember, is the form. So refresh. Like say Magic Mike. Magic Mike. Was it XXL? Is that what it was called? It was a sequel. Yeah. Totally works. Clears it out each time. So what do we actually do in this commit? Well, the main thing we did was I think we gave them all an ID, right? What was our last commit? Let me check that real quick. Git log. Set up event handler for flick form. Did it even? Let's see. Let's look at I'm going to look at my diff here real quick. Oh yeah, we didn't even create this object yet. So we did a little more than that in this commit. And if you want to see the difference between what you've got now and what your last commit was, inside this little Git section of VS Code, you can click on the file and see the changes. So it'll show you lines that were removed, lines that were added. So, store the flick in an object is really what we did there. Then just close this thing that says index.js working tree, and we're back to the non-diffed version. Questions? This was a big one. This is a mind blower. We're going to do it a million times, so hopefully it'll become second nature. This is going to be important when we get to React. But you'll just be in the habit of it by then. It's not even going to phase you.